Hello and welcome back to my channel. This week I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be talking about books that are exceptions to the rule. If you have been watching any of my content ever, you will know that sci-fi is not my favourite genre of all time. It's not to say it's a bad genre, I just find that sometimes sci-fi is written in such a very specific way that I find it really jarring. I've read the classics of sci-fi, I just hated them, and that's fine. Not every genre is going to be for every person. I'm definitely more of a fantasy, gothic, horror, mystery kind of gal, as opposed to straight up sci-fi. However, there are occasionally books which break this mold for me and I just adore, regardless of the fact they're in a genre that I don't massively like. And I'm going to give you a couple of recommendations based on, I don't like the genre, but I do like these books. First and foremost, I want to talk about Saga. Now, this is a officially 10-part series. I have part 10. I just need to reread everything first, where you've got opposing factions, you've got different alien races, you've got set in space elements, but the real narrative behind this is a very human story about two people who love each other very much, have a baby that is a mixture of these two races that don't really belong. It's a really interesting story. It's a very powerful, emotive story. If you like TV series like The Boys, or if you like Firefly or anything like that, I feel like you would really, really enjoy this graphic novel. And it's really interesting because I picked this graphic novel up because I had seen it all over BookTube. It was everywhere. But for some reason, I don't know if people just aren't willing to commit to 10-book series now, but I haven't heard many people talking about Saga again recently. I'm hoping that will pick up now that volume 10 is out because it is such a worthwhile series. And if you want to get into graphic novels or if you want to get into sci-fi, it's a very easy graphic novel to pick up and kind of get into, and I just think it does the world of sci-fi a massive good by being a great start. Next is a middle grade book, which is technically sci-fi but could also be considered speculative fiction, and that is Show Us Who You Are. This is as I said, middle grade by Elle McNichols. It is the second book from that author that I read, and I really, really enjoyed it. It is all about a young girl who is neurodiverse. As Elle McNichols is also neurodiverse, I really liked that there was their own voices representation, and she is an author by author for me. Whilst a lot of Elle McNichols stories look at the persecution of neurodiverse people, this one is very kind of on the nose with like eugenics. Eugenics is a key theme of this, and the idea that we can kind of replace and remove certain attributes that we don't like from people, including facets of being neurodivergent. And it's really interesting because basically the young girl in this, she goes along to this science facility known as Pomegranate, I believe? Yeah, Pomegranate. Oh my god, look at me. She goes along to this science program called Pomegranate where they want to study her and what makes her specifically neurodiverse, what kind of attributes she has as a neurodiverse person. And it seems like it's going to be for good reasons, but inevitably it isn't. And it is all about kind of championing neurodiverse identities and understanding that we're allowed to be different. What I really liked about this one is, although it has speculative fiction and sci-fi elements to it, it is a contemporary at heart. It is kind of going through the motions of looking at our own identity, how we define that identity, and who we allow to define it for us. Really, really liked that. Would absolutely recommend this. And if you're, I know I've got like a few parents that watch my channel, if you're looking for a book to kind of help you further understand autism and neurodivergence, I would absolutely recommend this just off the back of that, let alone because it's a sci-fi that breaks the sci-fi mold. Next, I want to talk about the Murderbot series. This is a 6-part series, I believe, and I kind of devoured them in December. And like I said, I'm not a massive fan of sci-fi, so I was really surprised when these short stories held my attention so thoroughly. The Murderbot series follows a Murderbot, which is basically a cyborg type machine man who has empathy and has the ability to kind of understand people, but just doesn't want to. He reads very neurodivergent, but essentially he wants to protect people. He's been programmed to kill people, and when he is able to fight his programming and escape, that is where the story kind of starts. And it's very, very exciting. It's very kind of Born Supremacy meets Firefly meets please leave me alone, I just want to watch my TV shows, you know, kind of vibe. I really liked the mixture of characters in this. I really liked the LGBT and disability rep in this. There's BIPOC rep in this. It really does cover all the bases and it's just really fun. And if, like me, you are a little sus about sci-fi and you're like, I don't want to commit to like a full series, because they're short stories, they're little novellas, they're very short bursts of a good time. So that's why it's on this list. Let's talk about Red Rising. This was a series that I was so intimidated by. I thought I was absolutely going to hate the series because it is a big sci-fi epic. However, it is the fact that it is a big sci-fi epic that I loved this. I've seen so many people compare this to like Game of Thrones in space, which I can absolutely see because there are political systems that are being corrupted and used for profit, and it is all about kind of power plays and battles. And the first book is essentially the Hunger Games, where they're in like a training ring of just killing each other, etc. So I can absolutely see why it would be compared to that. But the writing is so much better. It is empathetic, it's interesting, it's fast paced, but it's slow burn when it needs to be. The characters really develop over a longer period of time, which I found really authentic, and then all the science stuff on top of it is just kind of on top of it. I did find the beginning of the first book difficult just to kind of get with, but I think that's just because the world is so complex. There's a lot of info dumping at the beginning, but you get over it. It's fine. It doesn't matter because once you're actually in the story and things are happening, which is pretty much from like chapter 4, it's like you're in it, you're there, and you can absolutely see why the society needs to change. So the idea is that in the society, everyone is organised by different colours. They are portrayed in certain colours, and certain colours have certain jobs. Reds are the lowest of the low. They are treated like slaves, and they are basically working underground mining for a resource that apparently they need to make the world's like atmosphere livable. However, one of the Reds discovers through the help of his wife that actually the world is completely habitable and people have been living on it, and that he is just kind of in this society as a slave. He decides that he wants to change that, and there's a whole bunch of other reasons that he does that, and it's not just because he feels put upon, but the story really kind of goes into the kind of loss of identity, anarchy and anti-monarchy is all kind of key themes of this. But it's really, really interesting because you can see him kind of take on this persona that is not familiar to him, but because he understands survival, he's also teaching other people those skills as well. So it's a really, really fun mix of stuff. I really like this. Is definitely a character driven book, and that is why I enjoyed it so much. I love a character driven book. So yeah, this could have been set in space, this could have been set in Westeros, and I would have eaten it up regardless. It was so good, and I'm so excited because I've got 3 books to go. I've got Dark Age, Iron Gold, and then there's Lightbringer, which is coming out in the new year, and I'm so excited to get back into this series. It's so good. Another short one, I Am Not Starfire. Now, I know that a lot of people can be put off of sci-fi because it seems like it's going to be a lot of superheroes, and superheroes are very kind of tropey at this point. Marvel and DC have done everything they can to make sure that every other film that comes out is a superhero film, so I can absolutely understand if that would not be your thing. However, I would recommend I Am Not Starfire because whilst it is about superheroes, it is not about stereotypical superheroes. I Am Not Starfire is about Starfire's daughter, who is a goth LGBT gal who just wants a girlfriend, is in love with this girl at school, and doesn't really know how to talk to her about it. Can't get over the fact that every time she does try to talk to people about her own stuff, people just want to talk about her mother, who is very skinny and very beautiful and saves the world, and she just feels like an absolute outcast from her own family. She doesn't want to talk about the Teen Titans, or the Titans as they are now, and she just kind of wants to live her own life. However, when something horrible happens and there's like a massive catastrophe at school, she has to kind of get involved, and people keep asking her where her powers are. She's not really sure. She's not really sure she has any. So again, it's a really fun story about identity, and it is a contemporary at heart. It has more contemporary themes than it does sci-fi, but it has the science of superheroes and the space and the space battles and lasers and all kinds of other stuff as well. It's that side of sci-fi. It's more of a contemporary, but also the artwork is just really, really stunning. I love Mariko Tamaki's art style just in general, and this is a great story. I want to talk about a dystopia called The Power. This is about women who are able to electrocute men with this power that they kind of develop through mutation. Now, I know that there are a lot of transphobic issues that are not really addressed in this because it very much pits cisgenders against one another. However, as a sci-fi and a dystopia, it is one of my favourites. I find it a really, really fascinating story. There's several different perspectives, but it's written almost like a documentary that this man is trying to promote, that female professors are not allowing him to promote because they feel like it promotes the wrong message, which in and of itself just kind of shows where the society is at this point. But essentially it looks at if women had the physical ability to suppress men in the way that men have physically suppressed women over the last few generations, would we? And would that create a society that is equal, or would it still be imbalanced? And it's really, really interesting. It's a very feminist novel, very dystopic, but really thought-provoking, I thought. I really like the writing style of this. I need to pick up more Naomi Alderman books because I was just so fascinated by this one. And it was one of the books that I picked up pretty much straight out of university, so I hadn't really had an opportunity to get back into reading yet, but I really, really liked this one. And then the last one I have is Gear Breakers. This is essentially These Violent Delights meets Transformers. I don't know if that sold it to you, but basically in Gear Breakers you have two factions that are kind of fighting. One is a government program that has these mecha suits, which are giant soldiers made of metal, but kind of pilots inside them. And then you have Gear Breakers, who are basically trained to take them apart during battle. The main character of this, who is not the Gear Breaker, is one of the pilots. You have a Gear Breaker versus a pilot in this, who are on the front. And basically it's described as an enemies to lovers story, but what I found really fascinating about this is you learn pretty much early doors that both characters have very similar motivations, and they very much view these mecha suits in a very similar way for similar reasons, and I really, really liked that. Again, it has a real strong moral compass. What I especially liked about this is that there is a massive kind of ensemble cast of B-list characters that make up the Gear Breakers, who become a kind of found family for these two women. And I just really liked that. It was one of those ones where there's not a lot that necessarily happens in this story, but every character serves a purpose, and every character's purpose is to be a fully fleshed character. No one feels two-dimensional. None of the dialogue feels stunted. It just feels like a really authentic, good time, and I really, really liked that. And because it's YA, it is a far more gentle sci-fi, and it kind of goes into the science of it, but not too heavily, only what is relevant for the story. And again, it kind of feels like Hunger Games in the fact that some of these things are there just for the story, as opposed to because they're kind of building up a wider narrative. But it just felt right. I really liked it, and it's a duology. I think it's Godslayers is the second one, which I have somewhere on my TBR, and I'm really excited to get to that one as well. So would absolutely recommend. Another very, very gentle sci-fi. If you've never tried sci-fi before, but you enjoy YA fantasy, you should add this to your list. So there you have it. Sci-fi books I would recommend to you if you don't like sci-fi. There's so many different tropes and themes in these that I think they're absolutely worth your time. Let me know in the comments down below. Are you more likely to pick up any of these books now that you know that regardless of the fact that I really don't like sci-fi, I really, really liked these books? What is a sci-fi you would recommend to me? Because it's not like the other sci-fis. It's a pick-me sci-fi. And if you just want to let me know that you are here, feel free to leave a little planet down below. Treat yourself to something from Waypoint Books because it supports me and my content. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and most importantly, have a nice day.